right, you've tuned into the DOHP Signal. I'm your host, Hanley, former military medic, author of Photos from the Front Lines, and the founder of DOHP. With me today, I have the founders of 6 Minutes to Live, Hilary Gates, Bob Davis. I want to welcome you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Just to start us off right off the bat, give our audience a quick rundown about what 6 Minutes to Live is, so we can get a little flavor about what you guys are working on.
Thanks, Derek, for having us today. We're so excited to talk with you about this important mission. Bob and Tom Boothele and I started this about a year and a half ago now because we realized that the survival rate from sudden cardiac arrest had not changed enough. And we wanted to get back into the game and really show the world what they can do to move that needle. So Tom has stepped off the project, and Bob and I remain very, very proud to be the co-founders and board members of this initiative that is really focusing through storytelling and local engagement on increasing use of bystander CPR, public access to fibrillation, and community engagement in order to get that 10% survival rate up to 50, 60, 70% because we know it can be done.
Wow. Yeah, it's a grand mission you all have set for yourself, but I'm assured that your efforts will not be in vain and will help many folks along the way as you guys go. Bob, now you've been a paramedic, you've been a journalist for many years. Talk a little bit about how 6 Minutes to Live kind of came about, and the impetus for this whole deal.
When I was a paramedic in Colorado, I saw the disparities firsthand. Running transport across jurisdictions, I saw that the survival rate from cardiac arrest was different based on geography. We know in EMS, we tell our families, if I get hurt, take me over to that side of the street, right? Don't let these people treat me. It's the inside game we know in EMS. When I became a reporter, I kept seeing it in terms of health outcomes and across all kinds of health issues. And it was a story. I wanted to do an investigation. Like, how is this still happening? How is it still okay that life and death is defined by geography? So when I started getting into it and did a national investigation of it, looked at the major cities, I found out that it doesn't have to be that way. If a city cares, if a city looks at their data honestly and reports true response times, not wheels rolling to wheels stop, if they really look at what they're doing and look at their outcomes, they see where they can make improvements, and they do, and then they save more lives. So it was something that I was fired up about since being a paramedic. I had the chance to do CPR on a woman in a bank when I was a reporter, so I had personal connections to cardiac arrest. Throughout my life, there have been some synchronicities where this doesn't go away for me. And with the disparities these days in health outcomes, it just is, there's just no reason for it. So I was really inspired when Hilary and Tom kind of cornered me and said, come on, we want to do something. And that's how we came up with this idea about, well, let's do documentary storytelling. It's a story. Once people see it and they get inspired to act. And that's where we're going to move the needle, is when people actually, get really worked up over it and decide to do something.
Yeah. And I agree that the medium of film and photography, I think, are very important with a lot of the objectives that folks are trying to achieve within EMS, because you can show folks white papers and statistics and infographics, but you need to hit them here. You need to hit them in the heart and get that emotional resonance of, oh, this actually matters to me and could potentially affect my family and those I care about and things like that. So communication through those types of mediums, I think, is where we need to be headed. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing these types of things with that. Hilary, now you've also been a paramedic, you've been an educator, you have your hands in many pies around the industry. So how did you come to this project and kind of get with Bob and your other co-founder?
So Bob and I didn't meet in person until 2015, and I had no idea that he had written this Sentinel, article series in the USA Today more than 10 years prior to that. And I happened to be doing some freelance journalism while I was working as a high school teacher and a paramedic in the DC area. And I got to cover the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Summit at the Institute of Medicine. And Dr. Paul Pepe was standing on stage talking about the latest and greatest resuscitation science. And he said something like, And here in the audience is a local celebrity who we all adore and also are a little bit afraid of. And his name's Bob Davis. And he wrote this great article in the USA Today. And I was sitting there taking notes on my computer. And I said, I wonder who that guy is. So I just quickly looked at this article. And in the first paragraph of his series, he told the story of a woman named Julia Rusnick, who's a 21-year-old runner who collapsed and died of sudden cardiac arrest in Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And I almost came rocketing out of my chair because I was there when Julia died. And I didn't know that there had been an article written about it. And I didn't know that Bob Davis was trying to make some noise about it. I quickly got up at the lunch break and went running to find him. And the rest is history, as they say, because we called Julia Rusnick's parents, Henry and Rosa, who remain committed to making a difference in this initiative. They have a 5K every year in her honor that raises money for the organization and for their organization and for kids around the area.
Mm.
And we said, first, I said, I'm sorry that I couldn't help your daughter, and I'm going to do something about it. And can we use you in our mini documentary that we produced with our producer, Adam Kalinowski from Adam K Studios in Florida? And they said, absolutely. What else can we do to help? So we knew immediately that that restorative justice and that sense of turning your pain into purpose was the way we wanted to go. And we were extremely happy and very grateful for their involvement. So we met that day in 2015, and I didn't know that, more than 10 years later, I would be sitting here on a podcast with Derek and sitting next to my dear, dear friend and colleague, someone who I admire and respect hugely, and I would follow him anywhere, Bob Davis.
Wow. Yeah, the Julia story is very powerful. I saw the mini documentary and it's picture perfect example of why this work is so important. I mean, I remember I was an Air Force paramedic. We got a call to the basic training site for a 17-year-old who just dropped when they were doing PT in cardiac arrest. And fortunately, they had an independent duty medical technician within the PT area who was able to, start some interventions prior to us getting there. And it was one of those, I wasn't even supposed to be on the ambulance that day kind of a thing. We were an ER-based ambulance, so I was supposed to be in triage, and triage is like the chill shift, like just check people in and whatever. And things that, we had cardiac arrest to the basic training site, and 90% of the things that sound critical when you're going to the basic training site end up being BS. So we're like, okay, we'll see. But when we pulled in, I could see CPR in progress. I was like, oh shit, the oh shit pit, which I tell my students, when you pull up,
Yeah.
you can tell how bad the call is going by how everyone surrounding the call is acting. I called back. Luckily, I brought a couple people with me. I was like, hey, we have a live, cardiac arrest. Let's go. And we were able to, get him intubated and, get some stuff going, and shocked him on the way back to the hospital. And we were able to get a pulse back at least. He made it up to the ICU. I'm not sure what his final disposition was, but he, at least made it to the trauma bay and to the ICU because of the swift actions of those who were the closest. So it points exactly to what you guys are speaking of. Bob, you mentioned, you had to do CPR on a woman just outside of the job, just kind of going through your daily life. Was that kind of a powder keg to want to move kind of from journalist to activist, or was that kind of a gradual transition for you?
It's a great question. It was more of a seed. It was along the path. I was a cop reporter and I was sitting right outside the bank, and I heard the dispatcher, who happened to be my wife, another paramedic. I heard in her tone of voice,
Hmm.
CPR in progress, and I knew exactly what was going on. As a reporter, I never followed my scanner and went in and did any interventions. I just
Hmm.
didn't separate that, but that I just knew. I just dashed in. The guy who was doing CPR immediately stopped, unfortunately, and disappeared. And I did CPR, good CPR on her until the fire department arrived with a defibrillator, and it was the save of her. Connie was just one of the best things in my life,
Mm,
because just to be able to meet her and just to know that she was okay, and just it was one of those things that just it's life changing
hmm.
for the people who get involved. It's obviously life changing for the family
Yeah.
of the survivor and the survivor. But then it kept happening. As you said, there's synchronicities to this. There are, I had an editor at USA Today who I loved, had a cardiac arrest in the gym. He was resuscitated by the nurse there with an AED that they had put in because I was, promoting AEDs on airlines with my stories and whatnot
Hmm.
and raising awareness. They were ahead of the curve. So, now Fred is, at Columbia Journalism School. I mean, he goes on to, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter who's just touched so many lives.
Mm,
So the ripple effect here is just huge. And I think that it has been in my blood. And of course, I told these stories. I wrote these stories. These are great stories about saves and whatnot. They're good little news stories. But beyond the stories, I mean, the stories are just incredible.
hmm.
They're deeper. The synchronicities, the husband who was saved because the cat alerted his wife to that something was wrong. I mean, each of these stories is an incredible story, right? And I think that's what draws me so much to it now, because in this age of division and so much going on, so much
Hmm.
chaos and separation, Hilary calls our initiative 6 Minutes to Love. This is
Mm.
really about us bringing compassionate response to our neighbors in the moment that they need it the most. So I feel like it's a little bit more like as you were describing your cardiac arrest. You show up, you see CPR in progress, every cell in your body shifts.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not just that it's going to be a challenge. It's why we're there. It's
Yeah.
why EMS, modern EMS was invented and operates the way it does, to bring that care and to do this miraculous intervention right there. So it's something that has never left me. And when Hilary approached me and said we want to do something, it just kind of ignited me. My
Hmm.
cells just kind of lit up, and it's like, yeah, I can't get rid of this, and it's something we think can be solved. We think we can put ourselves out of work here because
Uh-huh.
we're really close to having that awareness we need, so that everyone walking around knows what that looks like and knows what to do.
Derek Hanley here, a photographer, a videographer, a veteran combat medic.
Derek Hanley is with us today.
We have on the line with us Derek O'Hanley. What a remarkable book. Obviously, you had no idea when you embarked on this journey of embedding with paramedics and, frontline responders. There was no way to know that a worldwide pandemic was on its way.
His goal was to document the day-by-day life-saving that they do. And now you can experience what it was like.
He's done a book that should be a coffee table book in homes and offices. It's something in the office that somebody's going to pick up, look at, and be moved by. This is the book.
Our military protects us overseas. Our first responders are the ones who protect us at home. And we need to start thinking about what we can do to take care of medics like we do for our military.
The book is Photos from the Front Line.
Photos from the front line.
Photos from the front lines.
Photos from the front lines.
So that's DOHP, it's DOHP.net, and you can find Derek's book there.
Hilary, what are the challenges to this becoming a widespread phenomenon of everyone kind of knowing CPR, knowing about AEDs, not hesitating when someone goes down and jumping in and getting to work? What are some of the things that you've seen that are kind of impediments to this being a widespread thing?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I was just about to tell the story about an impediment that is infuriating and also changeable. I was listening the other day to some old voicemails. I'm not sure what I was doing. And I found one from my former paramedic partner, Xenia, who I used to work with in Northern Virginia. And she's out in Idaho doing her thing, being great. And she got some CPR research training from a local instructor. She's no longer a medic,
Mm.
working actively as medic. And she said, I had to call and leave you this voicemail and let you know how mad I am that there is this woman teaching our CPR class and telling us that there's no hope, that you're going to break ribs, and that most of this is a fruitless endeavor. And so try your best, but just know that probably the victim won't survive, and do your very best. And some other hurdles like, what do we do if it's a female patient, and do I have to take her bra off, and am I going to get in trouble for touching her and things like that? And she said the instructor just had very little to offer in the way of hope. I'm not saying that that's a rampant problem, but what it's indicative of is this need that we have to debunk myths around what happens when you go put your hands on someone else and you show them that you care and you show compassion and love for your fellow human beings. And that is that, of course, you're protected under the Good Samaritan laws for trying your best. Of course, if we tell people, like I did last weekend at a road race in my town where we were teaching CPR at the finish line, that the chance of survival of someone who doesn't get bystander CPR right away in those first 6 or 7 minutes, or a defibrillator, their chance of survival is terrible, but your hands can give that survival a 50 or 60% higher chance. The guy who I was standing there telling that to was a 71-year-old who rides his bike all the time. He had had a really bad crash a couple years ago, and someone came upon him and helped him after his crash. And he said, Hilary, how can I make sure I'm ready to help someone else? I want to pay that back. I want to make sure I can be there in the right way and shape and form. And he said, how much is an AED? I want to carry one in my backpack. Is it too big for my backpack? And I set them all up with a small AED and said, go buy this and you're going to be amazing. And here's how you do CPR. And he took down, so you get it, like Bob said, a seed or germ, that it germinates, or this idea of passion where someone knows the expectation is that they do everything they can. In the same way that I wouldn't want anyone to stand there and feel completely helpless the way I was with Julia when she died. It just doesn't need to be that way. And when you tell someone that the power to save a life is in their hands, and that they know what to do, and that the things that they're doing have been proven by science and are safe, and yes, they might break a rib, and yes, people might yell at them, and yes, it's going to be traumatic, but think about what happens if you don't do it. So those are some challenges just globally, Derek, operationally. As well as I, that when you find a champion of a cause in your EMS agency or in your fire department, in your place of work, who says, damn it, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, and I'm not going to stand for this, and they go out and they're unstoppable, in the same way you are, Derek, with your messages about your past service. So we need more people like that. We need people to understand that their actions matter, and that their big hearts and the things that they can do to help their own community don't take a lot of effort. It just takes, it just takes someone to say, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way with some of these things. And I think your note on helplessness is a big thing. I think that could hook a lot of people because if you've ever been at an emergency or, been a bystander or something like that, you want to help. I mean, most people want to help, and most people don't know what to do. And that's the bottleneck that keeps people from wanting to intervene. And yeah, especially if you're a paramedic, like it's the worst when something happens and you're no gloves, no equipment, no defibrillator, no IVs, none of the things that you need in that moment are there. And that's like the you just like, you can't, it's almost like too much to stand, the helplessness in those moments. So I think those kind of stakes, communicating to folks in CPR classes may be a better opener than this probably isn't going to be effective like this other person is,
Exactly. Well, and debunking the myth that you really don't need a card. You don't need to be a card carrying member of some class you took where you spent hundreds of dollars in 4 hours. That's a really important thing to have for some people, for their job or for liability purposes for where they work or something like that. I'm not saying we don't need that, but you can learn bystander CPR, hands-only CPR in a couple minutes, and just be familiar with it, or watch a video and then put your hands on a mannequin and understand what that means. We had a 6-year-old who came running up with his mom, saw the AED, came running up with his mom last weekend and looked at the AED and looked at me and said, can I put the pads on? And I thought, who taught you that? And I looked at his mom and said, are you in healthcare? She said, no, but we've talked about this before, and I must have said that a couple of times. And now the kid is saying, can I put the pads on? Mind blown.
Yeah. I mean, if kids kids are smart enough to operate an iPad. I mean, theoretically, they should be smart enough to operate a two-button AED system.
Exactly.
And as long as they know where to put the pads, then they can rock and roll with that. And it's also encouraging to see things like I saw some like hands-only CPR trainers in like airports and random places where people can just go up and at least get the kind of the movement and the muscle memory down of what it feels like and how they should be working it. And that's literally enough. That's what I tell folks too is like, have you ever seen a ER or any of the medical shows where they pump on the chest really fast? Like, there you
Yep.
go. You know how to do CPR
Yep.
now. Bob, now you've done a lot of research on this topic and you've talked to a lot of folks and compiled the data and things like that. And for folks who maybe haven't read your articles, what are some of the things that surprised you and would surprise folks should they learn about some of these facts that you uncovered?
Well, I think one of the most insidious things is systems oftentimes lie to themselves about their results.
Mm,
They'll call return of spontaneous circulation a save when that person may or may not have walked out of the hospital. They
mm,
will use favorable response times to report their response time metrics to the city council or to the public. And that's not accurate. I mean, when Fred Anklem dropped at USA Today, the official response time for Fairfax County was probably like 4 minutes. It was 12 minutes from call to at patient side. And
hmm
that's just not so. One of the things I found in my survey is so many cities are, and just any community is kind of stuck where they are, and
mm,
they don't have the courage or the impetus to really question how they're really doing from the patient's perspective.
hmm
Because when you start measuring, you don't have good results. No city starts measuring and has a high survival rate. People who think they're
We're
doing
doing
just
great.
fine, if you're not measuring it to true outcomes and using the CARES registry to really track survivors walking, talking, good neurologic outcomes,
hmm
you don't know how you're doing, and I can guarantee you're not doing as well as you could
hmm
once you start measuring. So that was really the big takeaway, like just being honest. And that takes political leadership. So you have to have the mayor or whoever the political leaders are, the community demanding to know the real truth, the real statistics. And that supports EMS. I mean, so many, what Hilary was describing in that class, unfortunately, that's a lot of EMS providers have that experience. They call them CPR calls. I've never had a save on a CPR call because they go to a lot of nursing homes. They go to a lot of in-stage people. I mean, people die and they get CPR. So they have this idea that that's what it really is like.
hmm
So to help them see the bigger picture, and then the other takeaway for me was to go to cities and show them how the high performing cities were doing it.
hmm
They used to say, oh, they're cooking their books, they're lying, they can't be saving 50% of their witnessed arrests, right? It's
Uh-huh.
like, no, they are. It's that, and here's why: it's not an accident, right? It's not a fluke. It's by design. So the more I dug, the more I realized that this is very doable. It
hmm
takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. You got to be that first year or so when you start measuring, it's ugly.
hmm
You kind of feel ashamed, and there's some grief too. You know, as a paramedic, as we learn things, when we learn that, hey, the way I've been doing it is not the best way to do it, right?
hmm
And I mean, I would literally think of patients like I gave them what is now substandard care.
hmm
Like that person could have lived if I had known 20 years ago what we know now. So if you're courageous enough to be in emergency medicine, you're on the front line and you're putting your emotion into it, as you know from your work. I mean, we're taking personal risk to be there.
hmm
We're out on front and we're doing our best. And it's not without risk of being vulnerable. So I really see this as I want to support medics and systems, because when you're operating in a higher functioning system and you really know what you're doing and you can really target those improvements to make a difference that you can see.
hmm
I mean, when you get to meet that survivor and you have the reunion and you get to meet their family, you and the dispatcher, I mean, it shifts everything.
hmm
And it shifts whole departments. I mean, it shifts whole communities. Because it shows you we can do it. It's that instructor who says you'll never see it. I feel sorry for them. They just never been in a system where they do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, someone just one person kind of ringing the bell can force can have everyone kind of snap to thing. And that actually, going back to my original story about the basic trainee who went down, I could see that in a microcosm in that call because we showed up and I put the quick look paddles on, and it looked like asystole or very fine V-fib, and you could see just kind of the sag, when you see and you're like, this probably isn't going to work out. You kind of just like something inside you just like, okay, I guess we'll go through the motions and do our best, but it's probably not going to work out okay, and this and that. And I saw the sag, and I was like, no, like we're going to save this kid, like snap to, and everyone kind of like snapped at it. It was like okay, and like got the equipment going and this and that. We ended up getting him back, so I can see that as a microcosm expanding to much larger systems, and being something that can work. You guys brought up the word love, and I've seen that a little bit in some of your materials. And talk a little bit more about love, because I think as you're kind of talking about, and as we kind of know, there's so much division and hyperpolarization and all these things. And although social media and whatnot has made us more connected in some ways, it's also made us a little bit more distant in the physical realm and that type of a thing. And the message of love, I think, is one that's not talked about much these days. And I think it could be more. And how are you guys incorporating that into your messaging and into your kind of ethos of what you guys do?
I want Bob to start because I like to follow him. Go.
All right. I'll start. I mean, I feel safe, Derek, talking to you about that here on Dope because of the work that you do and the guests that you've had. Honestly, I feel safe talking here. We don't lead with it. It's woo woo. We're gonna scare people off if we get too much into the love thing. But I just want to be really honest about it. I mean, this is a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
And when a wife saves her husband in cardiac arrest because the cat alerted, that's just love. So this is I don't want to dance around it anymore. There's as paramedics we're like, oh, we're not playing God and it's no big deal. I want to be a little more intentional about saying it's a big damn deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a soul in free fall. This is someone who is clinically dead. They are gone, right? So for us to be able to pull this off, it's an act of love.
Mm-hmm.
And in this time of just caring about strangers, it doesn't matter who you are. Someone collapses, tag you're it, right?
Yeah.
You're the soul that's going to save that soul, right? And to me, that's the connection. That's the opportunity of this moment to be really real about this and look at our disparities. We can see the health disparities now in cities that measure this and do this really well. Then you see the disparities because of race. Then you see, why are people in this community dying at higher rates than people in this neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're going to really go to the next level, right? When you measure it closely enough that you can see that level of clinical outcome disparity on a map, that's where we should be having our conversation about connection and social justice and how we're showing up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my woo-woo definition. But Hilary, she's the one who coined the phrase 6 minutes.
I can't believe I get to be more woo-woo than Bob Davis right now. This is amazing. So I'm all about it. I'm all about this idea that when you live among other human beings who care enough to stop and check on you and say, are you okay? That's the ultimate act of love and community. And maybe it's because I moved to California recently. Maybe it's because I am exploring my spirituality in ways I haven't before and some life circumstances. But all around me, every time 6 Minutes to Live gets another spark or someone calls us and says, I want to help you out or whatever, it's all because of love. When I was first living here and walking around the neighborhood where I eventually bought a home, some other person who was walking around the neighborhood just stopped and started chatting because everybody here is pretty friendly. And by the end of our conversation, she might have, noticed that I was feeling a little bit apprehensive about, this new community I was living in, or wondering if I had chosen correctly. And as she walked away from me, she looked over her shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Santa Cruz will take care of you." And boy, was she right. And I got to say that when we dedicated our first public access defibrillator that I 6 Minutes to Live Santa Cruz helped get with the Santa Cruz Fire Department and the EMS folks and everyone in the area, because that came out of love. And that came out of someone who said, I want to give back to the community for whatever reason it was. And we're just inundated with story after story and connection after connection of family members of loved ones who have survived, family members of loved ones who have not, survivors and the bereaved who say, this thing happened, I was helped, and whatever the outcome was, I want to do the same for someone else. So over and over again, we're reminded by our storytelling that these stories matter and that people want to help other human beings. And so it is about love. And if we all keep preaching that, it's contagious. So that's part of, the answer I gave before about what are some of the barriers. Once you show somebody that hope and that ability of what love can do, in particular in a sudden cardiac arrest, why wouldn't that just catch fire and spread among everyone?
Yeah. And you brought up, Santa Cruz is super chill for sure. You brought up your kind of spirituality. I know, Bob, you talked a little bit about that too. And, as paramedics, any frontline, public safety, medical, anyone who's been in the trenches sees a lot and hears a lot and carries a lot. I call it the backpack of, everyone's got some stuff in their backpack. How have you guys found to progress on your healing journey? You said you're kind of exploring things too, kind of more recently, and it takes time. It takes time to kind of get to certain places of healing I've found for myself, and I'm sure it's similar with other folks. Where are you guys kind of at in your healing journey, and what have you found that's been effective in helping you kind of get through?
Well, for me, it's a lot of synchronicities. Just starting and experimenting and seeing what pops up next. So certainly meditation and contemplation and qigong, body movement, just following the teachings really as they emerge. It's so interesting how one speaker leads to the next, and a podcast comes up, and a book, and an unfolding, and then it just gently following wherever the path unfolds in this desire I have to center and know myself better, love myself better. We're talking about love, but self-forgiveness, surrender, all these things that are kind of big words, to spend time. And you've talked about meditation in your show, right? Spending time in this practice of being silent. It does take practice. The more I do it, the deeper it gets, and just the more lovely it is. Taking time to do that is a challenge. I've always been hair on fire, one call to the next, So finding time, making time to do it has allowed me to do it more in the moment. You had a guest on a while back talking about the micro meditations. Being able to drop into that space with a few breaths or a couple of minutes is so important for my survival now in the chaotic world. So the world I'm living in is full of challenges and chaos and struggles. I'm a leadership coach working with high functioning leaders who face incredible challenges, helping them find their center and find a space that they can be and connect with themselves. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's survival of where we are, and I think it's part of our evolution. I think there's a reason that we have these challenges that make this non-negotiable right now. So I'm talking about it more because I need it more. It's like not something I want to keep secret and keep in the closet, because I think I wouldn't be thriving if I wasn't practicing these techniques there are a million of them from all kinds of disciplines. There's no one way. It's not, one way to do it. It's just really, how do I find my center, my silence, and my inner stillness to quiet my monkey mind?
Yeah, what's the old Buddhist saying? You should meditate for an hour a day unless you're too busy, and then you should meditate for 2 hours.
Right.
I always love that one. Yeah. How about you, Hilary?
Following the lead of Bob and slowing down for sure is one of my biggest goals, especially for this decade, my 50s that I'm living in now, and understanding the importance of stopping to listen and to accept and surrender to the things that are showing up very loudly in my life, and one of them is this initiative, is 6 Minutes to Live and being
Yeah.
with Bob. Also, really understanding the role that nature plays and living in this constant state of awe in this beautiful place where I live, no matter where you live.
Yeah.
Paying attention, being astonished, telling about it, to quote Mary Oliver in a poem that I love, and just understanding that all around you are places to tap into being mindful and to slowing down and to setting down all of those things that are making your monkey brain go crazy, and instead saying, I'm going to do this one thing, whether it's going for a walk in the woods, taking a yoga class, going for a bike ride like I did today, surfing, being in the ocean. All of those types of activities are my meditation. And I am super interested in Zen Buddhism and have been studying the tenets of that and following some of those teachings. But I also recognize that just in my daily living, those things really can help me slow down. And to go back to this idea of being seen, where we, talk about what are our humans' greatest needs, and that need is to be seen by someone else and to be understood, and for your suffering to be acknowledged by someone else. Of course, in the very worst sense, a sudden cardiac arrest where your heart is not beating properly, you're going to be someone else's heart with your hands. But even just on a daily basis, making connection with someone, and eye contact and a smile or a thumbs up or a keep going, you're doing great. Those types of things bring me a lot of joy. So I try to keep that as my central focus.
Yeah, I think the kind of patchwork approach of taking things that you like from different philosophies and practices and things like that, and kind of creating your own system that works for you is very important. And you guys kind of both mentioned surrender and acceptance, and that's been kind of the watchword of my last several years on my healing journey, is acceptance. One of the things I found very helpful is ACT therapy, ACT, if you guys have heard of that, but it centers around acceptance. And one of the things that's been kind of a paradigm shift for me in studying this particular discipline of psychology is the concept of diffusion, meaning diffusing from our stream of thought, our mind, this and that, because you're not your mind. You are the consciousness that is aware of thought. And one of the problems that most people have is you're fused to your mind and your train of thoughts, and you feel like you can't escape it, and you're just on for the ride. Whereas with practice and with discipline, you can actually separate yourself, even if it's for a second, just enough to be like, yep, that's not me. And then you can now you're on a different trajectory than you were a second ago, when you were able to get that kind of return to your transcendental self, which is where we're trying to get to, I think, at the deepest level. Okay, let me ask you guys this then. It's a perfect world. You have all the resources. Everyone has everything that they need. What's the idealized state that we're working towards, so we can kind of, as they say, begin with the end in mind? What's the ideal state look like, guys?
For me, everyone who's capable of doing CPR, which some research has shown anyone 9 years old or older is trained in CPR. Bob?
Yeah, you stole mine. It's the kid who came up the other day and said, kind of put the pads on. I mean, it's just the awareness of every human that a sudden collapse of another human is a cardiac arrest until you rule it out differently. And you have absolutely, with your two hands, you have what they need, which doesn't take a lot of resources. It just takes a lot of awareness. I see this as part of an awakening. This is really just an awareness.
I would say also, Derek, public access to defibrillators. There should be laws in most towns and municipalities that say that if you own a public building and people are there, you're going to make a defibrillator available 24/7. It should be outside. It should be accessible all the time. Peter Antevi and his fire chief in Davie, Florida, worked to do that and made it a town ordinance. And now that's the law. So it's doable. Defibrillators could be as ubiquitous as fire extinguishers. Sure, they need to come down in price a little bit, and that's another issue. But their portability and the innovations and the companies that are out there are really showing us what could be with size and functionality and accessibility. Are really the tip of the spear.
Mm.
I want to pull the thread a little bit on the cost of defibrillators because I first started writing about defibrillators, 30 years ago and pushed to get them on airplanes when I was at USA Today, pushed to get them in federal buildings, pushed to get them everywhere. We wrote stories, activist stories saying, why aren't they here? Why aren't they
Mm.
there? And I really thought that, when Hilary came and awakened me from my Rip Van Winkle coma of being gone for decades, they would be cheaper. So perfect world, Derek, to your question, there's no reason that we can't bring that price down somehow.
Yeah.
The technology's been around long enough. I challenge the industry to do something about that because it's not rocket science. In the early days, there were a lot of FDA regulations. Just the idea of having a layperson defibrillate somebody was
Hmm.
a big hurdle.
Daunting. Yeah.
We're beyond that now, right? We have kids coming up saying, "Can I put the pads on?" So
Hmm.
I think sooner than later we can probably get that down somehow. We need some creative financial wizards, people smarter than me.
Hmm.
Maybe we can get some trillionaires together or something. They can figure out how to do this, but it should be doable.
On that note, what can folks do to start implementing some of these things where they live? And I'd like to kind of break it into two buckets too of folks who are listening who are currently in EMS or public safety or, are within the system themselves, and also the folks who are listening who aren't in EMS or aren't in public safety, but have a stake because they have a family and they have people they care about and they want to do something in their community to start moving the needle or at least getting the ball rolling with some of these things. So if you could speak to kind of both of those buckets and what you see as maybe a path forward that can lead to success.
Yeah, I'll let Bob talk about the political side because he's the gadfly and the guy who can talk through what it looks like to tell your city council that they better buck up and start doing something.
Yeah.
But in terms of the EMS side, again, as I mentioned before about champions and about people who take on an issue, usually it's because of something you did or something you experienced or something you did wrong, Derek, when we talk about being a medic and the things that we're entrusted with. EMS clinicians are some of the best humans on the planet. They give away
Hmm.
their entire lives and all of their affection for others and their ability to make so many sacrifices. They're there to say, I will do whatever I can to help this complete stranger. That's the kind of person that can do something like say to their community, hey, why don't we have more training of hands-only CPR? Why don't we empower the community, or after every cardiac arrest call, make sure we talk to the family about what are some ways they can get involved? What kinds of resources are out there that will help them understand what's what in their community, and then how to make it better for the next time. Stand up and say what's going on in the dispatch center isn't right, or we need to involve the dispatchers more, or the telecommunicators. Stand up and say the latest thing I read when I was doing some continuing education about cardiac arrest says this, we're not doing it yet. Why aren't we? Those are the types of people who are relentless and don't give up because they know what a difference it makes. And the thing we get a lot is why cardiac arrest when it's such a small part of an EMS or fire department's responses.
Hmm.
Well, we know that system design matters, and that when a system does cardiac arrest well and responds well and has all the pieces put together, they very likely do all other medical emergencies well. So those are some of the ways that if you're an EMS or in the fire department or public safety or law enforcement, you can really step up and serve your community.
If I can add to that too, Bob, before you jump in, one of the things I heard from somebody recently that was very smart was if you're in public safety or an agency or something like that, form a close relationship to the local media because they can take some of these success stories and things like that and then amplify the message. Or if you have a new initiative in the town, you can ping them to start doing a story on it or something like that. So if you are a head of an agency in a jurisdiction, consider forming a stronger relationship with your local media because they can be your biggest amplifier to the people who need the message, which is the local audience. Bob, what are some other ways that we can start moving the needle in the right direction here?
Yeah, so thinking about the person, like you said, who's not an EMS, but just becomes aware of this and says, "What can I do?"
Hmm.
The media angle's right on too, because and don't forget your student media, because your young
Mm.
journalists who are coming up, who are looking for great stories, they can tackle this and dive in and really do great stories here. This is something that we think should be on realtor.com. Like you should, if you're looking for a house, you should know what's the cardiac arrest survival, what's my EMS
Mm.
performance like? You
Whoa.
certainly have fire ratings for you have to have response times to get insurance for your house. So if your local community is not reporting CARES data and actually knows what its cardiac arrest survival rate is, you don't have one of the best EMS systems in the country,
Hmm.
period. Like the best EMS systems in the country have good cardiac arrest survival rates and they know how they're doing all the time. They then go on to implement whole blood and other advanced things that they can do because they have, as Hilary said, really good systems that know how to do quality assurance and do the job. The other thing is about the public is, just asking for the facts, right? Like really saying how am I doing? And
Hmm.
after a loss, I've lost two friends to cardiac arrest. It's so challenging to lose somebody because there's grief and you're stunned. But to
Hmm.
be able to take a breath and say, "Did I have to lose Larry in the gym? He had a cardiac arrest in the gym.
Hmm.
Why did we lose him?" Anyone who has the wherewithal to say, "I want to check on that and do something about it," may have the motivation to really bring some good change here.
Mm. We're kind of on time here, gang, but I just want to get your kind of final thoughts that kind of encapsulate this, if I could, from each of you.
Thanks, Derek. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank you again and show just utter gratitude for the work you're doing. You're doing a similar thing that we are in storytelling with your photography, and you're highlighting the things that make a difference and that really show the face of EMS and of public safety. So I really appreciate that. One of the things that struck me about this conversation today, Derek, is what Bob said earlier about EMS clinicians and public safety personnel who have never seen what it means to save someone. Perhaps they just have had some bad luck in their career, but for whatever reason, when they have not seen what is possible, then it's hard to believe in it. So we just want to continue to show people what's possible and show them that there is this ability to move the needle in a huge way by bringing in people to help you because EMS cannot be everywhere at all times right
Hmm.
away.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we are vulnerable and we say that we need help and then we allow other human beings to give us that help, working together is really where the secret sauce is.
Mm.
And that's what we hope to show everyone with 6 minutes to live.
Hard to add to that. Covered it all, but I will say we would just love to hear from your listeners, right?
Hmm.
We're just looking for people to want to join the movement, whatever they think they might do, don't know what they can do, interested but unsure. We love hearing from people all the time, and because we're connectors, it's through these connections, the synchronicities,
Hmm.
that we're going to make the change. So grateful for you and your listeners. These stories that we share are, they have real meaning, and just love to keep the conversation going.
How can folks find you?
Our website is 6minutestolive.com, all spelled out. We are on email at contact@6minutestolive.com and on social media in some form of 6min2live or something like that. So go see what we're doing, add your own photos. We like to use the hashtag I am ready because we want everyone who learns hands-only CPR to stand up and say, I'm ready to save someone's life.
Awesome. What do you guys have to plug? What do you got coming up? I know you got a couple things in the works, real quick.
Santa Cruz is going to do 2 more public access defibrillator unveilings. We're working on also equipping a local police department with a bunch of donated AEDs so that their entire fleet has defibrillators in the
Wow.
police cars. We're working on our filming with the documentary that we are going to produce for DC Fire and EMS. So got some fun stuff happening in Florida and in the DC area in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Bob, Hilary, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being on the show. What a great conversation. And hopefully this is a spark to spark even further conversations, and the ripple effect hopefully will continue to move outward. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys being on the show. You've been listening
Thank
to
you,
the Dope
Derek.
Signal. Tune in for the next episode.